Men, what kind of low-grade sexual harassment do you face on a daily basis? Worked in bars and would constantly be groped by older women who thought it was funny. Also, as a Scottish piper, kilt lifting is a thing and honestly it needs to stop. Grow up. My bulge was a topic of open discussion between some of the women in the office at a previous job. The kicker is that one of the women was our HR and sexual assault harassment reporter. Not really low grade, but when I used to work as a lifeguard on the beach there was lots of non-consensual touching. The two that really stick out are the middle-aged woman who walked up to me like she had a question, then got a hold of my DCK through my trunks because she wanted to see how big it was, and the 16-year-old girl who backed me into my stand and shoved a Skittle into my mouth with her tongue. Ironic how this post is labeled NSFW. But most of these take place at work. A female co-worker, I tell her if she was male, she would have been fired multiple times for her behavior. I must have been protected by the power of ugly or just didn't notice it. I know this kind of thing happens, I guess not to me thankfully. My 55-year-old co-worker somewhat resembles Ursula from The Little Mermaid. That hasn't stopped her from asking me if I think she's pretty, asking me to take her home, and telling me she sprays like a watering can. Yes. Really? Close bracket. Edit. I should add that I'm 21. I spray like a watering can. Yeah, and you ducking look like one too. What is she going to do? Tell HR? Not daily. But as a cosplayer who does shirtless characters, Ace, Grimjow, Barn, I get groped a lot. Chest and arms mostly. Also my ass gets slapped, squeezed, and crotch grabs are often enough to mention too. One day I got a text message from someone I didn't know, asking me to meet for dinner. I had gone to a new haircut place a few days earlier. One of the hairdressers, not the one who cut my hair, had seen me and decided it made sense to look up my phone number from the client records and ask me out. I had no idea who this was. It was so weird. I got several more messages from her before she stopped messaging me. Never went back to that hair place. A woman just straight up grabbed my DCK whilst I was working at a festival. My friend who knew her told me not to make scene as she was upper management. Try dressing in traditional Scottish kilt in a city without some woman lifting it to see if you have underwear on. We all think it's funny until a guy does it to a woman. I have been referred to HR for my voice being naturally too low. I was told I need to try and do more to be inclusive at the chat with HR about it. May you different be more inclusive. I was walking downtown with a friend when two drunk girls came out of a bar. And one of them just walked up to me and shoved her hands up my shirt and started rubbing my chest. She was yelling to her friend, "This is what a real man feels like." Dot. My friend was laughing his ass off. And her friend was explaining this was breakup therapy. Because she'd been dumped and she was in the process of accepting there are better men out there. I laughed it off and took it as a compliment. But imagining the gender roles reversed always stuck with me. I recently became a father and was working on a hit TV series. A female producer who is best friends with the executive in charge thought it would be funny to grab my stomach and say, "Working on your dad bod already?" My daughter at that point was 1 week old. If I grabbed a woman's stomach and said she was fat or pregnant, I would have been fired. Well, I complained to make a point. She recently was promoted and I wasn't invited back after 5 seasons. My family owns a restaurant and I would help out doing the dishes and operating front of house. My mum mainly hired female waitresses for some reason and I overheard things like, "He's cute, I wonder what it's like to ride Asian guys," and one time, one of the girls finished their shift and I was brushing the floor near entrance. She came up to me and grabbed my balls with a lip bite. I was really uncomfortable as I had a girlfriend at the time. I stalked them on social media for a bit and I found out they were really into pop and one of them had a history of dating Asian guys. They eventually quit as they had A-levels to prepare for, equivalent to AP, and because I live in a small town. Got my junk grabbed and pinched once when I was in a public transport by an older, homeless looking woman. Everyone saw what happened and didn't do nothing. Getting physically and verbally assaulted by women in nightclubs and then being asked to leave because of it. That's unfortunately an economics thing more than anything else. Women in a club attract men. Men who buy drinks and throw cash around thinking they'll get laid. A club full of men does not attract women tossing around cash. As a child I was touched, fondled regularly by the female teacher and elder students. When I complained to the head teacher, she said that I should enjoy it because I'm male. I was 12. Any bystander would just assume I was the one harassing women, sometimes 10-20 years older than me, because I would bite in defense. Schools was hell. I've had my arms groped, DCK groped, and ass groped before. I was in the store and an old woman on a mobility scooter wanted to pass me, so I stepped to the side against the shelf. Instead of using all the free space on the other side, she starts turning closer to me as she passes, so my DCK rubs all across her shoulder. She did a weird moaning sound at the same time. I posted about this on Facebook at the time and almost everyone thought it was hilarious. I was also going to mention the man boob comment. But used to be all the time drunk women or men would run their fingers through my beard and have some sly comment like, had a female work colleague sit on my lap during my lunch break asking for help, batting her eyelids. Now I wonder what would happen if I would have sat on her lap. My mill assumes that men have this complete inability to control themselves and it is 100% up to women to not pursue attached men. I was not aware of this until there was a debate going on about such things at a family function when she asked me, the only non-old male at the event, to confirm her belief. The implication that men are practically wild animals and unable to control themselves is pretty insulting. 32M with athletic build. At every job I've had, co-workers and customers have always openly grabbed my arms, smacked, squeezed my butt, and made comments about my appearance that would get me fired if I said them to women. Older dudes always assume I want to talk about sex. I was in a golf league with my dad's buddies and they always asked me about my sex life and made jokes that the beer cart girl wanted me. One time one of the guys pulled out his phone and went on his granddaughter's Facebook and tried to get me to say she was SI. I'm sorry. He was trying to get you to SIlize his own granddaughter? I wouldn't call it SIL harassment. But women just touching my hair without asking happens all the time. I have really long hair, but I can't imagine most women would be okay if some guy just started playing with their hair at a bar. If they just ask my permission, I'm usually cool with it. The worst was the chick who grabbed my braid and started yanking me around. Thankfully 4 women rescued me. I don't even know why that chick was pissed at me. She was just pissed I had long hair and extremely drunk. I almost had to punch her. It was so confusing. I've had some weird experiences too. I was eating in a pizza ranch with my dad as a 17-year-old and one of the waitresses walked up behind me and just grabbed my hair and commented on how nice it was. This happened as I had just taken a huge bite of pizza. It was so awkward. My dad was like, "UHH. Do you know her? She was cute," and I was really flattered, but at the same time WTF. I'm not a man. But it's something my male manager has highlighted to me. I work in a hospital as a therapist. Mainly with elderly people. Old men make creepy comments or even try to touch female nurses therapists all the time, and when they do we raise it as being creepy and usually go to see him with another person. We tell the patients that it's not appropriate for them to speak to us like that. Recently there was a female patient who kept making comments about the male staff and everyone just laughed it off. No one told the female patient off. Some of the female staff even agreed and egged her on. It wasn't until my manager raised it as an issue that it made me stop and think. If the roles were reversed, we'd be taking precautions to make the female staff feel safe. But there wasn't anything like that in place for male staff. I worked at a quasi-governmental agency and we hired a young guy fresh out of college. The director, who is a woman, walked in the room one day, walked up behind him, put her hands on his shoulders and literally started rubbing his chest. This was like 3 years ago. He just sat there frozen like a deer in headlights. I kinda lost my shit and said, what if he was female and a male walked up behind her and started rubbing her shoulders like that? She looked at me like I had 2 heads. I used to be a butcher when I was in my 20s. Every day was full of housewives making subtle innuendos like, I can't wait to wrap my lips around your sausage, or I really look forward to getting my hands on your rump. They also seemed keen to up the ante every time too. Every single day. I just smiled and carried on. But it was always uncomfortable. No idea why it is completely acceptable to them. I don't imagine they were like that to many other people. The ever-present assumption that the end goal of all my interactions is sex. I can't even be friendly to children without someone assuming it's sexual in some way. My husband has complained that there is this societal assumption that men are dogs who always want sex. And as such, several times he's not had his marital status respected. Women he's only been nice to in the past have made comments like, yeah, he's in love with me. He'd do anything for me openly in front of him. Have sent him messages prompting infidelity. And have even sent him nude images. There's a confidence that they can steal him not only from me but his past relationships, because men cheat is such an assumption. His favorite thing to say is, the only thing I cheat on is my diet. Women always also spank or also touch my ass. I also have caught women taking pictures of it. I know if the tables were flipped I'd probably be in jail. I used to work in a job in the entertainment industry where I wore a kilt a lot of the time. Couldn't believe how many drunken women thought it was perfectly okay to stick their hands up under it and grab a handful of my junk. Sometimes pretty aggressively too. I quickly stopped freestyling and wore boxers or compression shorts. And this would lead to the grabbers shouting out, "This loser is wearing pants," before mocking me to their pals. Oh. And far too often my kilt was lifted for anyone in eyeshot to see my junk. Yet when I pointed out how much trouble I would be in for pulling the same shit with them, I'd get looked at like I was being fucking ridiculous. Had a female manager get into my unlocked phone, send my nudes to herself, and then shared them with the other female manager. I was 24 at the time and both managers were younger. At the time I honestly didn't know how to feel about it, so I just shrugged it off with bravado because they were both attractive, so what the hell? But now I realize that attractiveness isn't a free pass for invading someone's privacy like that. Don't even get me started about being a straight male hairdresser. I was once dressed as a priest in a party and a girl, out of the blue, said I want Father's holy staff while trying to grab my crotch. I quickly moved to avoid it and she said, "What, are you gay?" Full stop. Well, I am. But just because a guy avoids having his DCK grabbed doesn't mean he's gay. Maybe they just don't want to be touched by you, Tracy. Edit. Just the universal idea that we are always the hunters and never the prey. As someone who is pretty tall at 6 feet, whenever I'm at the pub, bar or at a party, I'd almost always get a woman ask me if I had a big DCK. Most of the times I just respond saying my girlfriend is a lucky lady, I guess. I even had it happen when I worked as a bartender. Woman asked me this question and bought me a drink and told me to join her and friends after I finished my shift. Just took the money and bought myself some food on my way home after my shift, lol. Edit. I'm not really sure if it counts or not, but as a male who used to be extremely overweight, I would always have people, guys and girls, trying to touch my man boobs. It made me self-conscious and uncomfortable and I voiced that, but people continued to do it. They would grab them or hit them and pretty much everything in between. It happened very frequently as well, but I guess nobody saw a problem with it. Whether it was because I was a guy or because it wasn't a traditional form of harassment. Late here. 28 am in an office predominantly with women. I'm 6'3" and athletic. Especially the older ladies will touch my shoulders in a way that's not friendly and more to touch. I also received pretty gnarly comments when I lost a little weight. They also say shti like men are the weaker sex or something like that. I blacked out at work from an irregular heart rhythm and they all said that's such a man thing. That doesn't even cover everything, but it is a start. Not really sexual harassment, but this comes to mind. I work in a small retail store. I know a lot of customers by name and I really do like my job. I'm friendly with pretty much everyone. So guess what? If you bring your adorable child into my store and they do something adorable, I'm gonna giggle and interact with the child. I'm a 21-year overweight man who wears headbands. And your child is adorable. But that doesn't mean I wanna duck it. You would be amazed how many mothers will shove their child behind them or ask them to be quiet whenever I acknowledge the child at all. Makes me hella sad in the moment. I'm gay and have been frequently told by women I have worked with over the years that they could fix me. One was a manager. No. There is nothing to fix. And you can duck right off with that. I don't tell a straight guy he hasn't met the right DCK yet. Don't tell me I haven't met the right vulva yet. And maybe not daily, but I'm a gay man and so many women think it's acceptable to touch me or grab my DCK. I've also had quite a few people say things like if you tried PSSY you'd love it, or the worst is when progressive people say things like why do you like men, they're so gross. IDK man, I'm a man who loves men, I don't think men are inherently gross. I used to work in a place where an almost 70-year-old woman would constantly harass a guy in his 30s. Loudly tell him he's handsome. He's SI. Say that's name. He's my boyfriend. And everyone would laugh. The guy would chuckle nervously. Every time she had an issue with her computer or couldn't lift something. Hey. Name. My SI boyfriend. I need you. Everyone thought it was funny. I thought it was gross. The guy being hassled was the quiet type and would never say he was uncomfortable, but I could tell as a woman he was. I finally went to my supervisor and told her what this lady was doing was unacceptable. Not funny. And if a man was doing it to a woman he would be fired. She tried to tell me it was just a joke, but I was like, yeah, a joke. Well, something must have clicked with the supervisor. BC later that week the old lady stopped catcalling him and never did it again. Girl here. Back in the day when I went clubbing, if a guy friend was being harassed by someone they didn't feel comfortable with, I'd act as GF to them. Stand up for them or tell the girl to get lost. Guys would do the same back. Harassment is harassment. No matter your gender. So sick of guys not being taken seriously when they get harassed or sexually abused. Was a server at a restaurant. One of the only males there. I'm black and 6'4" and pretty built and was 18-20. The other female servers, ranging from 20-60 years in age, would constantly grab my crotch and smack my butt and make lewd suggestive comments. When I told them to stop, a rumor got spread that I was gay. It didn't stop, and when I went to tell my GM, who was also a female, she looked at me like I was crazy. There's this weird societal expectation for men to be hyper-sexual beasts when in reality we're normal human beings that take our bodily autonomy seriously just like any other self-respecting female. If I would have did one of the things my female co-workers did to me on a women who didn't ask, I'd be slapped with a sexual harassment assault charge and labeled a sexual predator. My male best friend woke up with a girl riding him. When I removed himself politely and asked her to leave, she got mad and asked why he couldn't come. He had to scream her out of the party and he got shitty from his friends for not finishing. He was ducking our ped. I'm a woman. But I was really tired one day and asked my boyfriend to take our 8YO to the park. He did so and apparently multiple people asked him questions about what he was doing, who the kid was, etc. Never happened to me. So it was absolutely because he was a guy. When I was in college there were multiple times I'd have my junk just openly groped at bars or parties. My GF at the time never believed me until she saw it one time. She was quite liberal and at the time maybe a little SJW and just couldn't wrap her head around the fact that men also get sexually harassed sometimes. It's just that no one cares. I had a female manager go in my pocket in front of another male manager while him and I were discussing work and grab a pocket-size PDT. No one batted an eye. It was as if personal space for men didn't existed. But the moment I snatched the item back with a swipe of my hand and demand she ask for it and say please, all of a sudden everyone looked at me like I was a monster and was threatening with assault. So I told to respect my personal space. She had the audacity to say oh that a female thing and I should man up. Everyone assumes I want to be set up with their pretty friend. Or girls assume I want their attention. Every day at work I get wolf whistled and let me tell you, it keeps happening no matter what I say or do. It happens every day even when I'm wearing sweatpants and a hoodie. Then again, I work alone with over 300 parrots so maybe it's my fault for teaching them how to do that. When I was 15 my female boss used to touch me inappropriately and make all sorts of comments regarding my genitals. I feel dumb talking about it now but looking back on it was all rather traumatic. It was my first job and I really didn't want to lose it. Haunts me a bit to be honest. Not every day. When I was about 18 I went through the massive crowd in the town center. I simply happened to see two ladies, the one with pushchair and the emo one walking along. Once they passed by me, the emo grabs my ass suddenly. The hard grab as she could. I jumped as turned my head to her. Her friends reacted like OMG I don't believe what you just did. As emo giggles. As I watch her vanished into the crowd. I was confused because I was taught that touch their ass or breasts in public are inappropriate. Why would she do that to me? Is it because we are similar? I am emo as well BTW? I told my friends about what happened. They didn't buy it. They think it was my fantasy. Apologies for my bad English.